My name is Ryan. I was 45 when I met Megan, old enough to recognize trouble and still foolish enough to believe love could repair it. She had 3 children: Logan, Brooke, and Owen. They were wary of me at first. I understood. Their father had made promises and disappeared often enough that trust had become something they rationed. So I did not force myself into their lives. I showed up quietly. A few months later, we moved into a house I had purchased with money earned from years of crawling through attics, repairing furnaces in winter, and standing beside dead air conditioners under the July sun. My HVAC company was small, but it was mine. Every dollar carried the weight of my hands. For nearly 8 years, I paid for everything: the mortgage, utilities, insurance, phone plans, clothes, sports fees, vacations, repairs, emergency room bills, traffic tickets, broken laptops, lost phones. Whenever one of them made a mistake, I became the solution. I thought that was what fathers did. Logan needed money after damaging a friend's car. I covered it. Brooke wanted an expensive cheerleading program. I paid. Owen lost his phone twice in 1 year. I replaced it both times. Not once did I ask them to call me Dad. I only asked for respect. Instead, the years sharpened them. Whenever I tried to enforce a curfew, Logan would lean back and say, "You're not my father." Whenever I questioned Brooke's spending, she would roll her eyes and tell Megan I was controlling. Owen barely looked up from the phone I paid for. Megan always had the same explanation. "They're teenagers, Ryan." As though cruelty were a stage of development. As though silence were parenting. She never defended me. Not once. She would lower her voice, touch my arm, and ask me to be patient. What she really meant was simpler. Keep paying. Stop expecting gratitude. The first time they said it openly, we were standing in the kitchen. Logan wanted money for another reckless mistake. I refused. Brooke laughed. "You're only good for paying bills." Owen smirked. Megan stared at the counter. That was the moment something cracked inside me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to let the truth in. A few weeks later, I came home early and heard voices near the patio. The kids were outside with friends. They did not know I was standing behind the screen door. Logan called me Mom's personal ATM. They all laughed. Brooke said they would be fine without me. Owen joked that Megan could always find another man to pay for everything. The laughter that followed was light and careless. Mine was not. That night, I sat alone in my office and made a list. 8 years of mortgage payments. 8 years of insurance. Phones. Clothes. Cars. Vacations. Sports. Bailouts. Numbers filled the screen until my life looked less like a family and more like a ledger. I did not sleep. A few days later, another argument began. Logan needed money. Brooke demanded new tires. Owen complained that his allowance was late. I told them no. Logan looked me directly in the eye. "You're only here to pay for us. That's the only thing you're good for." I nodded. They mistook my silence for surrender. The next morning, I canceled every card they used. I removed them from my phone plan. I stopped paying their insurance, subscriptions, entertainment, allowances, and every invisible comfort they had mistaken for a birthright. For the first time in 8 years, I closed my wallet. The consequences arrived almost immediately. Their phones stopped working. The streaming accounts vanished. The car insurance expired. Logan called me from a friend's phone, furious. I gave him one answer. "Your real dad can take care of it now." Brooke cried. Owen apologized. Megan accused me of punishing children. But they were not sorry for what they had said. They were sorry the money was gone. I could hear it in every apology. Each sentence circled back to a bill, a payment, a deadline. No one said they missed me. They missed access. So I left. I packed my clothes, my documents, and the few things in that house that still felt like mine. Megan stood in the hallway crying, promising things would change. I had heard promises before. Without my income, their life collapsed quickly. Their biological father refused to help. The bills piled up. The cars disappeared. The house became impossible to maintain. Megan called constantly. She said the children finally understood. But understanding born from hunger is not always respect. Sometimes it is only panic. A year later, I met Emily. She asked how my day had been and actually listened to the answer. She paid for dinner sometimes. She thanked me for small things. She never measured my worth by what I could provide. For the first time in years, I felt like a man instead of an account number. Looking back, I learned something I should have understood much earlier. When people believe your only value is paying for their lives, words will not teach them otherwise. Absence will. A closed wallet will. An empty chair will. I gave that family 8 years of my labor, my loyalty, and my name on every bill. They gave me one honest sentence. So I believed them. Was I wrong to walk away, or was stopping the money the only way to make them understand what they had truly lost? Leaving should have been the end of it. It was not. For months, Megan called from numbers I had not blocked yet. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she shouted. Sometimes she spoke in that soft, reasonable voice she used whenever she wanted me to forget what had happened. She said the children were struggling. Logan had lost the car because no one could afford the insurance or repairs. Brooke had quit cheerleading when the fees came due. Owen was using an old prepaid phone and complaining that his friends mocked him. Every story ended with the same silence. The silence where I was expected to offer money. I never did. The house was still in my name, and that became the final battlefield. Megan had assumed I would continue paying the mortgage while living somewhere else. She called it stability for the children. I called it financing my own replacement. I gave her 90 days to arrange another place to live. That was when the apologies became desperate. Logan sent me a message saying he had been angry and immature. Brooke wrote that she had always appreciated me but had never known how to show it. Owen left a voicemail so broken that I listened to it twice. For one dangerous evening, I nearly believed them. I sat alone in my apartment with my phone in my hand, staring at photographs from the years before everything collapsed. Christmas mornings, birthday dinners, a trip to the coast. Logan standing beside the first truck I helped him buy. Brooke holding a trophy I had paid thousands of dollars to help her chase. Owen asleep against my shoulder on a plane. They looked like memories of a family. But photographs are skilled liars. They capture smiles. They hide arrangements. The next afternoon, Megan called again. She said Logan needed $600 to keep his new job because his car was about to be repossessed. Before I could answer, she added that Brooke also needed help with the deposit, and Owen's school account was overdue. 3 emergencies. 1 conversation. That was when I understood the apologies had not changed anything. They had simply learned to knock before reaching into my pocket. No, I said. Megan went silent. Then her voice hardened. After everything we gave you, this is how you treat us? I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny left in me. What did you give me, Megan? She listed birthdays, holidays, dinners, years together. She spoke as though my presence at the table had been a gift granted by her children. As though being tolerated in the home I purchased was payment enough for everything I had carried. Then she said the words that finally buried our marriage. You knew what you were getting into when you chose a woman with children. There it was. The contract I had never seen. I was expected to provide without authority, forgive without apology, and remain without belonging. My love had been treated like a loan they never intended to repay, except they did not even believe repayment was owed. I chose a family. I told her. You gave me dependence. She called me cruel. I ended the call. 90 days later, they moved out. I stood across the street while a rented truck swallowed the remains of the life I had built. Logan carried boxes without looking at me. Brooke cried openly. Owen paused near the front steps as if waiting for me to stop everything. Megan was the last to leave. She placed the house keys in my palm. "You destroyed this family over money," she whispered. I closed my fingers around the keys. No. Money was the only thing holding it together. The house felt enormous after they were gone. Their rooms were marked by pale rectangles where posters had protected the walls from sunlight. The refrigerator was empty. The silence pressed against me. I expected triumph. Instead, I mourned. Not for the family I had lost, but for the family I had imagined. That grief followed me into my relationship with Emily. I waited for hidden demands. I studied every kindness for a price. When she offered to split a vacation, I thought it was a test. When she paid for my birthday dinner, I felt embarrassed rather than grateful. One night, she took my hand and asked why receiving anything frightened me. I told her the truth. I had spent so long being useful that I no longer knew how to be loved. Emily did not promise to heal me. She did something better. She stayed consistent. No emergencies designed to empty my account. No affection that disappeared when I said no. No children waiting behind her with open hands and closed hearts. A year after they left, Logan came to my shop. He looked older. Tired. He said he had taken 2 jobs. He said he finally understood what it meant to wake before sunrise, work until his hands hurt, and watch every dollar vanish into necessities. Then he apologized. Not once did he ask for money. That mattered. I told him forgiveness was possible, but trust was not a door that opened because someone knocked. It had to be rebuilt from the ground up. He nodded. Maybe he understood. Maybe he did not. I no longer needed to know. Because the deepest lesson was never about punishing them. It was about saving what remained of me. A man can survive being unloved. He can survive rejection. What destroys him is being used while everyone insists it is love. So tell me this, if their regret came only after the comfort disappeared, was I supposed to call that love, or was walking away the first honest thing any of us had done? Logan returned to the shop 3 weeks later. This time, he did not come asking for forgiveness. He came asking for work. I watched him stand near the service counter in a faded jacket, his hands buried in his pockets. He had lost the soft confidence he used to carry through my house. There was dirt beneath his nails now. Exhaustion had carved shadows under his eyes. "I'll do anything," he said. The words struck me strangely. For years, Logan had believed work was something other men did so his life could remain comfortable. Now he stood inside the company that had paid for his clothes, his car, his vacations, and nearly every mistake he had ever made. I asked whether Megan had sent him. He shook his head. "She doesn't know I'm here." I could have turned him away. Part of me wanted to. The wounded part. The part that remembered him laughing while he called me an ATM. Instead, I gave him the worst job in the building. Cleaning old equipment. The units came back from abandoned houses, flooded basements, and restaurants whose grease had settled into every metal seam. It was filthy work. Repetitive. Humiliating. Logan accepted without complaint. For 2 weeks, I barely spoke to him. I watched from my office as he dragged compressors across the floor, scraped corrosion from panels, and carried trash to the dumpster. He arrived early. He stayed late. He did not ask for special treatment. That surprised me more than his apology. On the 3rd Friday, I handed him his paycheck. He stared at the amount. "That's it." The old anger rose in his voice for half a second. Then he caught himself. I waited. He looked down at the check again and nodded slowly. "I guess taxes hurt more when it's your money." For the first time in years, I almost smiled. Almost. Brooke came next. She did not visit the shop. She called Emily. I hated that. It felt like an invasion into the one life I had managed to build without Megan's family reaching into it. But Emily listened, then told Brooke that any conversation about me had to include me. We met at a quiet restaurant. Brooke looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Something in her certainty had collapsed. She told me she was working at a pharmacy and sharing an apartment with 2 women she barely knew. Then she began crying. She said she had repeated things Logan said because it made her feel powerful. She admitted that Megan had sometimes complained about me when I worked late, saying I cared more about the company than the family. The children had learned to see my absence without understanding what it purchased. That confession hurt differently. I had believed Megan's silence was weakness. It had been permission. Sometimes it had been instruction. "Did your mother call me an ATM too?" I asked. Brooke looked away. That was answer enough. She told me Megan had grown bitter whenever I refused an expense. She would say, "After everything I gave up for him, he can pay for this." I sat there listening as 8 years rearranged themselves in my memory. The arguments. The smirks. The way all 3 children seemed to use the same words. They had not invented their contempt alone. They had inherited it from the woman sleeping beside me. Brooke reached across the table, but I pulled my hand back. She flinched. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I believe you're sorry now." The words came out colder than I intended. Her face folded. But I could not comfort her. Comfort had been my weakness for too long. Every tear had once turned into a payment. Every crisis had become my responsibility. I needed to know whether regret could survive without reward. So I paid for my own meal and left. That night, Emily found me sitting in the dark. I told her everything Brooke had said. I expected anger on my behalf. Instead, she asked the question I had been avoiding. "Do you miss them?" I wanted to say no. The truth would not let me. I miss Logan shouting at football games. I miss Brooke singing badly in the kitchen. I missed Owen falling asleep during movies and pretending he had not. I miss people who had hurt me. That was the ugliest part. Betrayal does not erase love. It poisons it. The feeling remains, but every memory burns when touched. A month later, Owen wrote me a letter. Not a message. Not an email. A letter. He said he had blamed me because blaming his real father felt too dangerous. His father could disappear. I never did. So Owen punished the man he believed would always stay. I read that sentence until the ink blurred. He had mistaken reliability for permission. Maybe they all had. I met Owen in a park. He was 18 now, though he looked younger when he saw me. He did not ask me to pay for school or buy him a phone. He only asked whether I had ever loved him. "Yes," I said. The answer broke something in both of us. He cried quietly. I did not. I had already spent my tears in empty rooms. We spoke for an hour. Before leaving, he asked whether we could meet again. I said maybe. Not yes. Maybe. That was all I could offer without betraying myself again. Megan called that evening. She had learned about the meetings. Her voice was sharp with accusation. "You're turning them against me." I realized then that nothing inside her had changed. Even their remorse became something she could make about herself. "I'm not turning them against anyone," I said. "I'm letting them tell the truth." She called me vindictive. I ended the call. Logan kept working. Brooke continued sending letters without asking for answers. Owen met me for coffee twice. Slowly, painfully, something new began forming. It was not a family. Not yet. Perhaps never. It was accountability. And accountability was more honest than the love we had pretended to share. Still, one question followed me home each night. When trust has been destroyed by years of contempt, is forgiveness an act of strength? Or just another way of teaching people that they can wound you and still return? People think betrayal ends with one decision. It does not. It lingers in ordinary moments. A grocery store aisle. An empty passenger seat. A holiday morning when the phone stays silent longer than expected. The wounds reopen without asking permission. The first Thanksgiving after everything collapsed, Emily invited me to her sister's house. I almost refused. Large family gatherings had become reminders of everything I had lost. She insisted gently, never pushing hard enough to make me defensive. When we arrived, something felt unfamiliar. No one expected me to pay. Her brother argued about football. Her father complained about politics. Her mother asked if I wanted another slice of pie before she asked what I did for a living. I was being treated like a person, not a provider. The realization hurt more than I expected. For 8 years, my usefulness had entered every room before I did. If a vacation was discussed, people looked toward me. If someone mentioned college, eyes drifted in my direction. Every celebration carried an invisible invoice with my name already signed at the bottom. Here, nobody cared how much money I had. They cared whether I wanted coffee. Driving home that night, Emily noticed how quiet I had become. "You've been thinking all evening." "I've been comparing." She squeezed my hand but waited. "I forgot relationships could exist without transactions." She looked out the window before answering. "They always should." Simple words. Powerful enough to expose 8 years of lies. December brought another surprise. Megan filed papers demanding financial support for Owen, arguing that I had acted as his father long enough to continue contributing. Reading those pages felt surreal. On one page I was apparently responsible enough to finance adulthood. On the next, I remained nothing more than a man with no parental rights. Convenient mathematics. My attorney read every document before closing the folder. "She wants the benefits without the responsibilities." Exactly. That single sentence summarized my marriage better than any photograph ever could. The hearing lasted less than an hour. Records showed every payment I had voluntarily made. Mortgage statements, insurance policies, tuition deposits, medical expenses, vacations. Thousands upon thousands of dollars spent without legal obligation. The judge looked at Megan. Why wasn't the biological father providing this support? She had no answer. The case ended almost as quickly as it began. Walking out of the courthouse, I expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt tired. Winning does not restore wasted years. Outside, Logan was waiting. He had taken the morning off from work without telling me. "I wanted you to know you weren't standing alone." Those words stayed with me longer than the judge's decision. For months, Logan continued proving himself in small ways. He never asked for advances on his paycheck. He cleaned equipment nobody wanted to touch. He admitted mistakes before anyone discovered them. Respect had finally arrived. Not because I demanded it. Because life had taught him what comfort had hidden. One Friday evening, after locking the shop, I handed him the keys to an old service van. "It isn't free," I said. "I know. You'll earn every mile." "I want to." There was no excitement exploding across his face. Only gratitude. Real gratitude is quiet. It doesn't celebrate gifts. It honors sacrifice. Brooke invited Emily and me to a community theater performance where she had volunteered backstage. She introduced me simply. "This is Ryan." Not Dad. Not my stepfather. Just Ryan. Oddly enough, it felt respectful. Titles mean very little when actions finally become honest. After the show, she handed me a folded envelope. Inside was a list. Every major expense she remembered me paying while she grew up. At the bottom she had written one sentence. "I can't repay this money, but I can spend the rest of my life making sure your sacrifices were never wasted." I folded the paper carefully. It meant more than any repayment ever could. Owen remained the quietest. He visited the shop on Saturdays, sweeping floors or organizing tools without expecting wages. Sometimes we worked for hours without speaking. Healing rarely arrives through speeches. It grows inside ordinary silence. One afternoon he finally asked the question that had haunted him. "If I had never said those things, would you still be living with Mom?" I looked around the shop before answering. "No." His shoulders dropped. "Why?" "Because your mother didn't just allow disrespect. She depended on it. As long as you saw me as a wallet, she never had to see me as a husband." He stared at the concrete floor. "I never understood." I know. That was the tragedy. Children often repeat lessons they never realize they're being taught. As winter settled over the city, I stood outside my shop watching snow collect on the service trucks. Logan locked the garage doors beside me. Owen carried empty boxes to the dumpster. Brooke arrived with coffee for everyone before heading to work. No one had asked me for money. Not once. Only time. Only conversation. Only another chance. Perhaps that was the beginning of redemption. Or perhaps redemption begins much earlier, the moment a man finally refuses to let his generosity become permission for others to erase his dignity. Tell me honestly, if respect comes only after someone loses everything you provided, is it earned too late? Or is that the only moment it can ever become real?